Biggest country rivalries in Europe. What are we in store for right now? If I had to think of the biggest rivalries in Europe, I guess the only one I can really think of is probably the English and the French. Maybe also Italians and Spaniards? Maybe not. I'm not too sure. Maybe that's just sports. All right, this one's coming from General Knowledge. I think we've checked out one of their videos before, maybe a long time ago, but I'm here for it. Smash the like button and let's dive in.
Hey everyone, welcome back to General Knowledge. In this video, we're going to be going through what are regarded as some of the biggest country rivalries in Europe. Now, I know what some of you are gonna say because of the thumbnail, Turkey isn't in Europe. Well, a little part of it is.
I didn't even see the
Plus,
thumbnail.
my point is that Greece has a rivalry with them and Greece is in Europe, but we'll get to that in a minute. Throughout history, certain events have taken place, either wars or just strange disputes between countries, and those have, in some cases, transformed into long-lasting rivalries, even until today. So let's take a look at a few of those in Europe and try to figure out why they exist. First, France versus Germany. When Julius Caesar wrote his famous book, Commentaries on the Gallic War, he talked about a notable and significant cultural difference and rivalry between the Gauls and the Germanic tribes. Some say those differences were aggravated by the fact that Gaul was Romanized as a part of the empire and Germania was not. But these are just the justifications for the differences between the two peoples. They aren't justifications for the rivalry to exist, especially because in most of these cases, the two rival countries are located right next to
each other. That's kind of like the easiest way to pick out where rivalries will be at, right? When two countries are right next to each other. I'm trying to think. We don't really have a rivalry with Canada or Mexico. We just have state rivalries, but way different.
Cultural values. The main issue is territory. Most rivalries seem to arise from the simultaneous desire to rule over a piece of land, and this is certainly the case with France and Germany. A great example of that is the region of Alsace-Lorraine, a region which has switched between French and German rule a few times throughout history, being at the origin or at least in the results of many wars. And almost all of the conflicts between France and Germany had to do with territory, starting with the Battle of Bouvines in 1214 and throughout history, like the Franco-Prussian War in 1870. Thankfully, today, the countries are now friends and allies. But France's historical enemies weren't reduced to Germany. There was also another big one, which is now its ally as well.
Okay, I was right on one at least.
A long time ago, a bunch of Danish Vikings decided to set sail and head west. A few landed in France and settled in Normandy. The French were pretty much annoyed by it, and the Normans grew stronger and developed a new culture in the region. In 1066, the Norman Duke set sail again, going north and conquering England, becoming king of that land. And he also decided to claim France. This started the 100 Years' War. After the war ended, the French won, and the English were somewhat pushed off continental Europe. This caused the animosity to grow and the rivalry to intensify. Throughout history, it was demonstrated through various other conflicts and wars. But today, they are also allies after having fought together in many wars. England itself also has a somewhat long-term rival, although they are, at least for now, part of the same United Kingdom, Scotland.
Yeah,
and here we can also go back to Roman times. In 122 AD, after the Roman invasion of Britain, Emperor Hadrian ordered the building of a wall separating England from the Caledonian tribe.
I will say, I did not know about the English and Scottish rivalry, but I listened to a couple of English podcasters, and when they've mentioned Scottish people a couple of times, I was a little taken aback because they were like making fun of the way that they talk, and I was like, what the heck, really? I didn't know that y'all did that.
Of Scotland that the Roman forces couldn't control. This demonstrates how their cultures are somewhat different since so early on. Almost 1,000 years later, William of Normandy invaded Scotland from England, and this was in 1072, defeating the Scottish king. Ever since then, the English and Scottish went up against each other time after time, war after war. For instance, in the 14th century, England conquered and occupied Scotland for several decades. The English were persuaded to withdraw the occupation forces in return for Scotland's payment of a ransom of around £80 billion in today's money. I'm guessing this didn't help the Scottish liking the English. After that, Scotland remained independent and a close friend of France, England's other rival. Eventually, in 1706, the Acts of Union took place, effectively uniting the kingdoms of England and Scotland into one. Next, the one on the thumbnail, Greece versus Turkey. One of the biggest country rivalries in the world, even until today. One of the biggest issues between Greeks and Turks is the mutual belief that their rivalry has been going on forever, when in reality, if we look at the big picture of history, it's quite recent. The first main event of their rivalry was apparently the Battle of Manzikert in 1071, fought between the Byzantine Greeks.
That's recent. 1071. I was gonna guess like the 1700s. He goes to 1071. All right.
Seljuk Turks, although some even say it dates back to the legendary Battle of Troy, with the Greek invaders fighting the Trojans, to whom the Turks would maybe relate to. Eventually, the Turks took Constantinople and expanded their rule into the Balkan region, stretching into Europe and occupying Greece. In the same fashion that the Scottish didn't like being occupied by the English, the Greeks probably resented the Turks for occupying them as well. So essentially, I think the rivalry is rooted in many centuries of conflict between the two countries, fighting over the same territories. Just like in antiquity, Greece ruled over parts of Anatolia, later in history, the Turks ruled over parts of Greece. A good example of that territorial dispute lasts until today, with the issues in the island of Cyprus being divided between Greek-supported Cyprus and half the island being supported by Turkey. Two countries which are usually seen as classic rivals, for instance in football matches. But
Portugal and Spain.
Also allies
I didn't
and
see
actually
Portugal and
pretty
Spain.
close these days are Portugal and Spain. And the issue here is once again the same. 1. Territory, and 2. Previous historical occupation. Portugal emerged as independent from the Kingdom of Castile, one of the kingdoms which eventually became part of Spain. Portugal's very first moment was marked by conflict against the future Spanish in order to achieve their independence in 1139. Throughout history, other wars happened as well. For instance, in 1383, there was a crisis of succession to the Portuguese throne, leading to the Spanish wanting to claim the Portuguese crown. This culminated in the Battle of Aljubarrota, which the Portuguese won, consolidating their independence in 1385. But conflicts continued.
So many wars. You know what's so wild is because, like, of course, everything that's going on in the world today with geopolitics, I see so many people online that are just so blown away and like, they just can't, I can't believe this is unprecedented that this is happening. I'm like, we have been doing this as humans for a millennium. It's insane.
Continued throughout history, with the last real wars between the two being in 1801 and 1808, also related to the Napoleonic Wars. Portuguese animosity towards Spain was also increased during a brief period of Iberian Union from 1580 to 1640, when, because of another succession crisis, Spain ruled over Portugal. However, after that, independence was restored, and today, the two countries are allies and even close friends. And then we have the case of some city rivalries, although these are mostly historical ones that have
City rivalries.
disappeared. Sparta versus Athens is a good example. Despite sharing a common language and the same gods, Greek city-states were very different from each other. This was the case between Sparta and Athens. Athens was a maritime power that derived its wealth mostly from trade, and Sparta was an agrarian state very focused on military. Spartans were an aristocratic oligarchy, while Athenians lived in a democracy. Although when
I gotta do some more research on Sparta. Of course, the only thing I've seen about Sparta is the movie 300, which I know is not historically accurate. Amazing movie, but yeah, really interesting area.
Not very fair one by today's standards, but more egalitarian regarding the population as a whole. Athens devoted much of its wealth and attention to art and architecture, while the Spartans famously prided themselves on living an unnecessarily harsh life. This is a case where the conflict wasn't so much rooted in desires for territory, but more in big cultural differences. Other examples of city rivalries that didn't have to do with only territorial disputes are ones based on other types of power. Trade, for instance. A good example of this is Venice versus Genoa. Thanks to the Crusades, there was a lot of money in transporting crusading armies to the war, supplying the Crusader kingdoms, purchasing goods, and selling those goods back in Europe. Competition for that trade led to conflict between the two cities. In a trade war, there usually isn't a decisive winner, but I guess in this case, you could say Venice came out on top. And a last example that shows conflict of all, say Venice came out on top.
Antioch?
And
it does. It's so funny. All of our, I think I've said this to you guys before, but all of our cities are just named after your guys' cities. I'm not too...
a last example,
we have a city. One of the cities right next to us is called Antioch. The city I live in is called Lebanon.
And culture is Carthage versus Rome, with the Romans wanting Rome to be the main hub for trade in the Mediterranean, wanting to take control of North Africa, and wanting to assert the dominance of the Roman way of life. Rome was involved in 3 Punic Wars, which eventually led to the full destruction of Carthage and the imperial control of their lands. So, those are some of the biggest historical rivalries between countries in Europe.
Okay, that was not what I was expecting at all.
If you remember any others, leave a comment below and let me know which they are, and I can maybe do a part 2 of.
Yeah, you guys, let me know what you think the biggest rivalries are in Europe right now. Gosh, I don't even know. I have no idea. Let me know in the comments. I'm really curious to see what you guys say. All right, I'm getting out of here. Appreciate the recommendation, you guys. I know when I do these map videos, I don't talk as much because it's just information that's all completely new to me and I'm kind of just learning in real time. But I do appreciate them, and if you guys like them, keep recommending them. I'll check them out when I get a chance. All right, I'm getting out of here. See you guys there. Peace.